Howdy, welcome back to Wobble Enjoy Sports. If you're new around here, hope I can get you to consider to like the content and subscribe to the channel. But if you're a regular around these here parts, thank you very much for the continuous support. It is time to preview the 2025 fixture for the North Queensland Cowboys. And the question I have coming into 2025 falls on top of the shoulders of head coach Todd Payten. Now, every coach in the NRL is going to have their own different fixture and own different way that they're going to tackle their club's draw. For Coach Todd Payten, it's going to be pretty fascinating in my opinion. Is he going to put his foot down on the accelerator in the first half of the season, or is he going to manufacture it to come in the second half of 2025? Now, before I get into the preview for the Cowboys draw, I do break it up into sections. So I've already looked at the draw and I've said to myself, right, I think this is the first section, this is the second section, that's the third section. Usually there's 4 or 5. There will be 3 sections, or there are 3 sections, in my opinion, for the North Queensland Cowboys in 2025. So without further ado, let's get stuck into it. Beginning with the preseason, game number 1 is from Cairns. They host the Dolphins. It will be a C-string, B-string affair. In week number 2 of the preseason, they travel down to the state of Victoria to take on the Melbourne Storm. And while it's not first grade, and while there is another game coming up in 2025 in the season proper, this technically will be the first trip down to Victoria since the year 2019, or thereabouts anyway. It's been a handful of seasons since the Cowboys have appeared down in the purple state of Victoria. Now let's get into the season proper. From round 1 through to round 7 is what I'm focusing on. That is the first section, or at least this is the first section, in my opinion, for 2025. How is Todd Payten going to practice caution and put the foot down on the accelerator? So it starts round number 1 at 4 Pines Park against the Manly Warringah Sea Eagles. This is a game that's not being talked about enough, in my opinion, throughout the past few months since the draw has been released. It is pretty much 5th versus 6th coming into this contest, and these two teams mirrored each other, in my opinion, throughout different stages of 2024. The Cowboys' best away record, or best away venue, is at 4 Pines Park. So this is a massive game to start off both of these teams' campaigns. In week number 2, they host their second biggest rivals, the Cronulla Sutherland Sharks, up at QCB Stadium. They met in the semi-final where the Sharkies unfortunately punted them. The Cowboys can now get a little bit of vengeance. And speaking of rivalries, one of the best rivalries in all of rugby league, the Brisbane Broncos versus the North Queensland Cowboys on Friday night footy. This is the Broncos' first home game of the season, so they're going to be proper riled up under new coach Michael Maguire. So the Cowboys need to come in pretty battle-hardened. Battle-hardened mentality, I should say. In round number 4, they host the unpredictable but young Canberra Raiders. Now this is the first real tricky part of their season. Round 5 and 6, they have back-to-back away games. And game number 1 is down at CommBank Stadium against the Penrith Panthers, the defending 4-time premiers, back-to-back. And the Cowboys have never won at CommBank Stadium as well. So that is a huge challenge for them. In round number 6, they then travel to Western Australia for the first time since the mid to late 1990s to take on South Sydney at the brand spanking new-ish Optus Stadium. And the way that the South Sydney Rabbitohs are sort of leaning up towards 2025, this is going to be a very, very difficult fixture. And then round number 7 to finish off the first section of 2025 is the Cowboys' first bye for the year. So let's sort of try to summarize things, right? The Cowboys have 2 home games inside the first 7 weeks of the competition. They travel down to Sydney twice, they zip down to Brisbane, and they have a trip over to Western Australia. Now, 3 of the teams that they take on inside the first section did play finals last year, so half of the teams didn't. But still, the strength of schedule for North Queensland, I think, without really getting into or reading what the rest of the fixtures look like, I think Cowboys can lay claim to having the most difficult start for 2025. That is a monstrous first section for 2025 for the North Queensland Cowboys, in my opinion. And also their first bye falls on Easter round, and well, Cowboys have embarrassed themselves a little bit over the Easter round over the past couple of years, haven't they? So the NRL said, you're not embarrassing us again. The second part to the Cowboys season is a complete role reversal to what we saw inside the first 6 or 7 weeks of 2025. The Cowboys, they have 4 home games and 1 away fixture over this period from round number 8 through till round 13. This is the second section for the North Queensland Cowboys, and it starts with a home game against the Gold Coast Titans. It will be their first home game in a month, and it takes place the day after Anzac Day. The following week, it's Magic Round. They're the away side against the New Zealand Warriors. And then it's a straight month from round number 10 through till round 13. It is a straight month where the Cowboys do not leave the city of Townsville. That's a great bonus after so many away games to start the season. So from round 10 though, Penrith come up and Manly come up and the Tigers come up. And in between those 3 games is the Cowboys' second bye for 2025. And this is where the big question will fall, in my opinion, for Coach Todd Payten. And it really does depend on how well or bad the Cowboys start 2025. So the game against Manly in round number 11 is the weekend where every player in the NRL is stepping up to be selected for State of Origin, because the week after is the first split round for 2025. And thankfully the Cowboys have a bye on that weekend, because the Cowboys have been very reliable for State of Origin representation over the past 3 or so seasons now. What is interesting about this is that this is the only time that this is happening for the Cowboys, because as we all know, there are another couple of split rounds to complete the fixture for 2025. This is the only time the Cowboys have that bye on that split round. Game number 1 for State of Origin takes place at Suncorp Stadium, and they have a home game against the Tigers 3 or so days later. Does Coach Todd Payten rest players against the Tigers, or does he play them? Well, in my opinion, considering the Cowboys have the bye the week before Origin, considering that Origin game is also taking place in Queensland, I say this is the one game, if you were to ask me what round would you like the Cowboys players to represent and back up after Origin, this is the game. And it's not because it's the West Tigers, perennial wooden spooners, no, because they're going to be a completely different kettle of fish coming into this contest. But for reasons I'll get into more detail in just a little bit, if there's one game that I want Cowboys players to back up from, it is game number 1 of State of Origin. It is for this game against the Tigers in round number 13. But to summarise it, we've got 4 home games and 1 away game and 1 bye in between round number 8 and round number 13. And those Origin players should be backing up after game 1 of State of Origin, in my opinion, for the North Queensland Cowboys. And section 3 is pretty much the rest of the regular season, because the Cowboys don't have their third bye until the final round of the regular season. Cowboys coach Todd Payten has no respite, and for the players that don't play State of Origin, there's no respite for them as well. But let's start from the start of section 3, which starts round 14. It is a trip down to Amy Park. It's their first trip to Amy Park since 2019 against the Melbourne Storm, and this will be a full-strength Origin blockbuster. This should be a very good game of footy. In round number 15 and 16, this is where Coach Todd Payten really needs to be aware of his game plan and have confidence in the depth of his squad, which I'm sure he does and which I do as well. But in round number 15, they host the Dolphins in what will be an Origin-affected game. In round number 16, a few days after the Perth State of Origin game, They are away to the Sydney Roosters. There is no way that you would be asking your players to back up after flying to and from Perth after game number 2 of State of Origin. So this game against the Roosters, also the Roosters, if James Tedesco and Angus Crichton play in Origin, they won't be backing up. This will be a B-string sort of affair in round number 16. So that's 2 weeks where the Cowboys play completely Origin affected. And in round number 17, they then take on the Gold Coast Titans at Cbus Super Stadium, and that will be a full-strength affair down on the Gold Coast. In round 18 and 19, Origin rears its head once more, and this time they take on the Melbourne Storm, the second time in a month, and this game will be Origin affected. So Harry Grant, Cameron Munster, Ruben Cotter, Jeremiah Nene won't be participating. Just some names, just to name a few. In round number 19, they host the Bulldogs, so they have back-to-back away games here. Home games here. They have back-to-back home games here, and they take on the Bulldogs a few days after game number 3 of State of Origin. I hope you're with me here. So game number 3, then the Cowboys have a home game against the Bulldogs up in Townsville. You're not going to ask your players, especially if it is a decider, you're not going to ask your players to back up from a Game 3 New South Wales game to fly up to Townsville and then take on the Bulldogs. The reason why I'm talking so much about Todd Payten's methodology and how he's going to tackle it, this is important this year, the way that the draw has been fixtured for us, the way that it's gone for us, because the only opportunity for Origin players to back up days after is that game for the West Tigers in between round number 12 and round number 13, because there is an opportunity for players to back up, but that's only if they're made of absolute steel and they're absolutely loose in the head. Now, if that's not how the way the cookie crumbles, we've really got to see why. We've got to hear the reasons why and how Coach Todd Payten decided to back players up after a game in Perth for a match in Sydney against the Sydney Roosters. So that's why the big questions are really falling on top of Coach Todd Payten in 2025, in my opinion. There are some other players that are under pressure, but I think the main person in Townsville under pressure in 2025, not because his job is on the line per se, but Coach Todd Payten has a very, very interesting year ahead of him for sure. Also, by the by, the match between the Bulldogs and then the game against the Dolphins is the shortest turnaround for the North Queensland Cowboys as well, which is another reason why you don't want them to be backing up against the Bulldogs a few days after a Game 3 down in New South Wales. They play the Bulldogs on a Saturday, and then they're away to the Dolphins for a Thursday night clash. So you definitely don't want to be playing your Cowboys, your big Origin stars, in between that 4-day period. And then from round number 20, it is the race to the finals for every single team. From round 20, it is all systems go for every single club in the NRL, and it starts with a game against the Dolphins at Suncorp Stadium. Round 21, the return of Valentine Holmes on Friday Night Footy. It is the 6 p.m. game, however, but it is the return of Valentine Holmes to Townsville. So that is going to be fascinating viewing for sure in round 21. And then between round 22 and round number 25, the Cowboys, who were notoriously known for being nighttime, Saturday night merchants, they are Channel 9 Sunday afternoon bound. They are sunshine glory for the next month or so, man, in between round number 22 and round number 25. It starts with back-to-back away games, however, to the Sharks and to the Parramatta Eels. They host the Newcastle Knights finally in a rematch of their classic elimination final before they then venture down to Leichhardt Oval to take on the West Tigers. And if there is one game that I have looked at for this fixture and just rolled my eyes and gone, ugh, it is this fixture. It's not because it's the Tigers. It's not because the Cowboys are scared of going to Leichhardt Oval. I think the Cowboys have won 2 of the past 3 games at Leichhardt Oval over the past 4 years or so. It's just that it's boring now. It's like the Tigers have heard that stat where the Cowboys don't ever win, and they keep requesting it, and they keep requesting it. And the Cowboys have gone down and won 2 games now. So I'd really like to, next year in 2026, I'd really like to see the Cowboys take on the Tigers at Campbelltown Stadium for a bit of a change, because it's just a bit boring now seeing them go down to Leichhardt Oval again. But it is for Channel 9 Sunday afternoon footy. So Sunday afternoon footy out at Leichhardt Oval. It doesn't get much better than that. Or does it? It does, because in the final game of the Cowboys season in round number 26, Saturday night football that is being beamed on Channel 9, it's the game against the Brisbane Broncos in Townsville. They are going to put everything they have into that game against the Brisbane Broncos and what surely will be a sellout crowd up in Townsville. And that's it, because in round 27, they have their bye. What are my overall thoughts of the Cowboys fixture? I think it is a fun fixture. I mentioned the Leichhardt Oval game. I think that's the only game where I go, that's a bit boring. But they're going to Perth. They're going back down to Amy Park. They do have one bye throughout the split rounds, throughout the origin rounds. And they also only have that one very short turnaround. So if you can get away in a season with only having one short 4-day turnaround, that's pretty good. As so far as the strength of opposition goes, it's the Broncos, the Storm, the Sharks, the Panthers, and Manly twice, which includes Dolphins, Titans, and Tigers. So the Cowboys are taking on arguably the top 5 premiership favourites twice in 2025. No doubt about Storm, Panthers and Cronulla for sure. Manly and Broncos, that's debatable there as well. So far as strength of opposition goes, I think it's pretty up there, man. I really do. Their middle portion of the season where they have a lot of their home games, that's where they really need to be their most effective. But if you can get out of the first 6 weeks of the competition with 3 wins and 3 losses, with the strength of opposition we've got inside that first section for 2025, I think you take it. I genuinely think you take it. So obviously very excited for the season ahead. I like the draw. It's a tough draw, but the Cowboys are a tough team, and the Cowboys are going to make the 8 this year and really battle to make the grand final, make it very, very dangerous for everyone. So thank you very much for tuning in. I hope that all made sense. I hope you enjoyed the video. Look forward to more content on the Wobble Enjoy Sports channel in the not too distant future, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you. Take care. Adios. #riding high 2025.